A victory in court earlier this week for two pro-life activists. Joining us now to explore this case, we have one of the attorneys representing the pro-life organizations, Erin Hawley. Erin Hawley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Of course, Erin, you and at the Alliance Defending Freedom, representing the Frederick Douglass Foundation and Students for Life of America, in a really significant and rather concerning lawsuit, actually. The D.C. Court of Appeals handing down a significant ruling. What do we need to know about this case?
So absolutely. So this case is really incredible when you look at the facts. It arises from the summer of 2020 when, following the tragic death of George Floyd, Black Lives Matter protests spread across the nation. The Washington, D.C. was in particular sort of a hotbed of political activity, and protesters spray painted in permanent paint, sometimes in paint spanning an entire city block, different messages such as Defund the Police or Black Lives Matter. But our clients wanted to hold a peaceful protest and chalk a similar message: Black preborn lives matter. So the difference was one word. And while, as the District of Columbia pointed out in its really good opinion, not a single Black Lives Matter protester was arrested for riding on city streets, our clients were arrested when two students chalked Black preborn lives matter. As the District of Columbia held, this was a blatantly unconstitutional violation of the First Amendment. The city is not allowed to discriminate based on viewpoint.
So just to be clear, you're talking about washable chalk as opposed to, say, spray paint.
Yes.
And I guess my question is, how does the city justify this type of unequal application of the law?
You know, that's a great question. They didn't really. What they said instead was that it's just a really high standard and that you're not allowed to bring a selective enforcement claim under the First Amendment. And the D.C. Circuit was really firm in saying absolutely not. There can be selective enforcement with respect to viewpoint. And in particular, they said that the government can't pick political winners and losers based on their speech. So the city is perfectly entitled to say no one can write on city streets, even in chalk. But what they can't do is allow certain viewpoints to be expressed in chalk or in permanent paint, and disallow other disfavored views from being expressed in the same manner.
So I guess the irony sort of here is that we often hear the concerns from many of these groups about how this country is inherently racist, yet this surely appears to show a direction of being inherently biased at the very least.
Well, certainly, if you look at these facts, again, the District Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia has some pictures in its opinion. It's very unusual for a court decision to have pictures in it, but the pictures really are worth 1,000 words, because you see these massive signs painted in permanent paint across district property all over the summer of 2022. And then you see these two students kneeling down in front of a Planned Parenthood to write Black preborn lives matter in washable chalk about 12 or 18 inches high. And those two students are arrested where no one else is. And that sort of viewpoint discrimination and censoring based on disfavored views is simply antithetical to the First Amendment. Thankfully, a unanimous panel, including judges from all different ideological perspectives, found that that was simply impermissible.
Are you concerned at all that this is not just simply about this one case and that there might be a broader problem here?
You know, that certainly could be the case. And one thing you have to show in a case like this is that the district has a pattern or practice disparately enforcing its law. The case was remanded, so we'll have the opportunity to go back down to the district court and to receive discovery from the city, from the District of Columbia, and find out exactly, how that 6 police cars managed to show up and arrest 2 students when no one else was being arrested throughout the city. And so, presumably there was some policymaking decision that sent those police cars there to stop that activity, even though other First Amendment activity had been permitted.
Erin Hawley, Alliance Defending Freedom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.